So get this, you're sitting across from her at dinner or lying next to her at night, and everything looks exactly the way it's supposed to look. But something in the room feels different. Not wrong in a way you can point to, just off. Like a song playing in the right key, but slightly out of tune. You can't name it. You almost talk yourself out of it in real time. You tell yourself you're tired, or overthinking, or projecting old stuff onto something that doesn't deserve it. So you let it go. And then it happens again, and again. And at some point, the feeling stops feeling like anxiety and starts feeling like information. That specific moment, when a man's gut is quietly trying to hand him something his mind isn't ready to hold, is exactly where this conversation starts. Because the question isn't just whether something is happening. The real question is whether you can trust your own perception when your emotions, your ego, and your fear of being wrong are all running in the background at the same time. There's a difference between a man who is paranoid and a man who is paying attention. Understanding that difference clearly and honestly is what this is about. 1. What actually predates everything? Here's the thing about intuition, it doesn't show up with evidence. It shows up as a feeling you can't quite justify but also can't quite shake. And for most men, that feeling arrives long before anything concrete does. Long before the late nights have an explanation. Long before the phone gets suspiciously quiet or suspiciously loud. It starts with something much smaller than that. It starts with her energy. Think about a guy named Marcus. Been with his girlfriend for 2 years. Good relationship, comfortable, real. Then one Tuesday evening, he comes home and she's on the couch, and she looks up when he walks in, smiles, says hey, and something about it lands differently. Not cold, not rude, just somewhere else. Like she's physically present, but a part of her checked out and forgot to leave a note. He shakes it off. Long day, probably. She's got work stress. He makes dinner, they watch something, they go to bed. But that feeling comes back on Thursday, and again on Sunday. The shift that happens before anything else is a baseline change. Every relationship has a rhythm. The way she greets you, the way she talks about her day, the way she naturally leans into you or reaches for your hand without thinking about it. When that rhythm quietly changes, most men notice it before they realize they're noticing it. It registers somewhere below conscious thought. The mind hasn't caught up yet, but the body already knows something is different. What makes this stage so easy to dismiss is that nothing is provably wrong. She's not being cruel. She's not picking fights. On paper, everything is fine. And so a man convinces himself that what he's feeling is his own insecurity talking, which, sometimes, it genuinely is. But there's a difference between a man who is anxious by nature and a man who is calm by nature suddenly feeling unsettled. That gap matters. Because if you're generally a secure, grounded person and something in your gut starts quietly raising its hand, that's not paranoia. That's pattern recognition doing exactly what it was built to do. The shift comes first. Everything else comes after. 2. Her phone isn't the story. Her body language is everyone jumps straight to the phone. That's the first place the mind goes. Who's she texting? Why is the screen facing down? Why does she take it to the bathroom now when she never used to? And look, those things can mean something. But fixating on the phone is actually one of the easiest ways to miss what's right in front of you. Because a woman who is emotionally somewhere else will tell you that story with her body long before her phone ever does. Think about a couple, together 3 years, living together, the whole thing. The guy, Daniel, starts noticing that when he reaches over to hold her hand while they're watching TV, she doesn't pull away exactly, but she doesn't settle into it either. There's no squeeze back, no unconscious lean, just a hand sitting in his hand like it's doing him a favor. He noticed it once and brushed it off, noticed it again and felt something drop in his stomach. Because that hand used to find his automatically. That was never something either of them thought about. It just happened. And now it doesn't. Physical affection in a healthy relationship is largely automatic. It's not performed, it just flows. When a woman is emotionally connected to her partner, she touches him without an agenda. A hand on his back when she passes him in the kitchen. Her leg against his when they're sitting together. Small, unconscious contact that happens because being close to him feels natural. When that starts disappearing, it's not always because she's angry or distant in an obvious way. Sometimes she seems perfectly fine, perfectly normal, just no longer reaching. Eye contact changes too. Not in a dramatic, guilty way, more like the depth goes out of it. She looks at you, but she's not really looking at you. Conversations that used to have a certain aliveness to them start feeling a little transactional. How was your day? Fine. Dinner? Sure. It's not hostility. It's absence. And absence, when it replaces presence that used to be consistent, is one of the clearest signals a man can receive if he's paying attention to the right things. The phone might confirm something, but her body will show you first. 3. The emotional distance that feels different from normal stress. Every relationship goes through seasons. There are weeks where life is heavy, work pressure, family stuff, personal battles, and during those times, a woman can absolutely pull back a little, become quieter, less available emotionally. That's normal. That's human. The version of distance that should get your attention is the one that doesn't have a source you can point to, and more importantly, the one that doesn't include you in it. Here's what that looks like in real life. A guy named Trevor notices his girlfriend has been off for about 3 weeks. Quieter than usual, less engaged, going to bed earlier. He asks if she's okay. She says she's just tired. Work has been a lot. He accepts that because it sounds reasonable. But then the weekend comes, no work, no pressure, nothing on the calendar, and she's still somewhere else. They go out to eat, have a perfectly pleasant dinner, come home, and she's on her phone laughing at something. Not laughing with him, just laughing at something he's not part of. And when he glances over and asks what's funny, she tilts the screen slightly, says, just a meme, and keeps scrolling. That right there. That small, almost invisible moment is worth paying attention to, not because of the meme, but because joy, real spontaneous joy, just showed up in the room and he wasn't anywhere near it. When a woman is dealing with genuine stress, she might be distant, but she still turns to her partner in small moments. She still laughs with him at something stupid on TV. She still vents, even briefly. Even in her most overwhelmed seasons, he's still part of her emotional world. The distance that comes from outside stress is usually temporary and porous. You can still reach her if you show up right. The other kind of distance is different. It has walls. It's consistent regardless of her mood. She can be perfectly happy, energetic, even playful, just not with him, and not about anything that includes him. Her good moods start happening in a separate room, literally or figuratively. Arguments also change texture during this period. They stop being about real things and start feeling like she's looking for exits. Small things become bigger than they should. And when he tries to resolve it, there's no real relief after, just a temporary ceasefire before the next one. Because the argument was never really about what it said it was about. That kind of emotional relocation is one of the hardest things to sit with. Because she's still there. She just isn't. 4. Guilt behavior and overcompensation. This one catches men completely off guard because it looks like the opposite of a problem. Everything has been feeling distant and cold, and then suddenly she's warm again. Unexpectedly attentive. She suggests a date night out of nowhere. She's softer, more affectionate, more present. And the natural human response is relief. Okay, whatever that was, it passed. We're good. But sometimes that sudden warmth isn't a return. It's a reaction. And there's a meaningful difference between the two. Guilt is a heavy thing to carry quietly. And it doesn't always make people withdraw. Sometimes it makes them overperform. Picture this. A guy named James has been feeling the distance for weeks. Then one Saturday, his girlfriend wakes up and is suddenly the most attentive version of herself. Makes breakfast, asks about his week genuinely, suggests they do something he's been wanting to do for months. He's relieved. He's happy. He doesn't question it because why would you question something that feels good? But by Sunday evening, she's drifted again. The warmth had an expiration date. And that pattern, the sudden spike of affection followed by a return to distance, is one of the most telling cycles in this whole situation. What's happening internally is actually straightforward. Guilt, when it builds up past a certain point, becomes uncomfortable to sit with. And one of the fastest ways to get temporary relief from guilt is to do something kind for the person you feel guilty toward. It's not calculated necessarily, it's more instinctive than that. She's not sitting there thinking, I'll buy him dinner so he doesn't suspect anything. It's more that the guilt gets loud. She responds to it by showing up, and for a moment everyone feels better, including her. Then real life resumes. The other version of this is unexplained generosity. She picks up something for him without being asked. She's suddenly more complimentary than usual. She initiates affection in moments where she normally wouldn't. Individually, any one of these things is just a good girlfriend having a good day. But stacked on top of existing distance, stacked on top of changed routines and reduced eye contact and arguments that never fully resolve, they start painting a picture. What makes this section of the pattern so disorienting is that it gives a man false closure exactly when his instincts were starting to sharpen. He was just getting to a place of quiet clarity, and then the warmth arrives and softens everything back down. Which is why it's worth understanding, not to become suspicious of kindness, but to stay honest about the full pattern rather than letting one good weekend rewrite 3 difficult weeks. Guilt shows up. It just doesn't always look like guilt when it walks through the door. 5. His gut, his ego, and the danger of both this is where things get complicated. Because a man trying to figure out if something is wrong in his relationship is not working with a clean instrument. He's working with a mind that has its own history, its own fears, its own blind spots, and all of that is running in the background while he's trying to read his situation clearly. His gut might be telling him something real, or his ego might be manufacturing a threat that isn't there. And the tricky part is that both of those feel exactly the same from the inside. Meet 2 guys. Same situation on the surface. Girlfriend has been a little distant, a little less communicative, a little harder to reach emotionally. First guy, Ryan, has been cheated on before. Badly. And ever since, his nervous system has been on a kind of permanent low-level alert. So when his current girlfriend takes 3 hours to reply to a text, his mind doesn't file it under, she was probably busy. It files it under, here we go again. He starts checking, asking questions that feel casual but aren't, reading into tone, connecting dots that may not actually connect. His gut is loud, but it's loud because it was trained to be loud, not necessarily because something is wrong right now. Second guy, Marcus, is the opposite problem entirely. His ego has a very specific rule. He is not the kind of man whose woman steps out. That's just not his reality. So when the signs start showing up, his brain quietly files them somewhere he doesn't have to look. She's just stressed. She's going through something. It's a phase. He's not in denial because he's stupid, he's in denial because the alternative requires him to hold something his ego isn't built to hold. So he rationalizes, and rationalizes, and rationalizes until the situation is so far past the point of early intervention that his only options are painful ones. Both of these men are working against themselves. One is too loud, one is too quiet, and neither is actually seeing clearly. The only way through this is a level of self-honesty that most people find genuinely uncomfortable. A man has to be willing to ask himself, is this feeling coming from something real in the present, or is it coming from something old that never fully healed? And equally, am I dismissing this because I genuinely don't see anything, or because seeing it would cost me something I'm not ready to pay? Neither question is easy. But a man who can sit with both of them, honestly, without flinching, that man is going to see his situation clearly. And clear vision, even when what it shows you is painful, is always better than comfortable blindness. 6. What confirmation actually looks like and what to do with it. There's a moment that changes everything. Not the suspicion, not the uneasy feeling, not the pattern you've been quietly watching for weeks, but the moment it stops being a feeling and becomes something you actually know. Maybe he saw something he wasn't supposed to see. Maybe she said something that didn't add up and the explanation she gave made it worse. Maybe a conversation happened and the truth came out in pieces, slowly, like something collapsing in slow motion. However it arrives, that moment has a very specific weight to it. And what a man does in the minutes and hours immediately after that moment matters more than most people realize. Because that is exactly when everything in him wants to react. Picture a guy named Aaron. He's been carrying the suspicion for about a month. told himself he was overthinking it, talked himself down more times than he can count. Then one evening he sees a message. Not from snooping, it just appeared. And in about 4 seconds, everything he'd been trying not to believe becomes something he can't unknow. His chest tightens. His hands do that thing where they're suddenly not sure what to do with themselves. And somewhere between the shock and the anger, a very loud, very convincing voice in his head starts telling him to act right now. Confront her right now. Say everything right now. That voice is not his friend in this moment. The immediate aftermath of confirmation is one of the worst possible times to make decisions or have conversations. Not because the anger isn't valid, it absolutely is. But because a man operating from pure emotional shock is not going to handle this in a way he'll respect himself for later. He might say things he can't take back. He might make threats he doesn't follow through on. He might break down in a way that hands her control of the situation before he's even had time to think. None of those outcomes serve him. What actually helps in that moment is space. Not forever, just enough to let the initial wave move through without driving the car. Step outside. Go for a drive alone. Call a friend who isn't going to pour gasoline on the situation. Do something physical if that's what it takes. The goal isn't to suppress what he's feeling, it's to make sure his feelings aren't the ones making his decisions for him. Because here's what's true. A man who finds out his woman has been unfaithful and handles himself with composure, not coldness, not performance, just genuine steadiness, walks away from that situation with something intact. His dignity, his clarity, his ability to make a clean decision about what he actually wants to do next. 7. The conversation that needs to happen. Most men either avoid this conversation for too long or have it too fast. Both are understandable. Avoiding it feels safer because as long as nothing has been said out loud, there's still a version of reality where everything is fine. Having it too fast feels necessary because the tension of knowing something and not addressing it is genuinely unbearable. But the conversation that actually needs to happen, the one that leads somewhere useful regardless of the outcome, requires neither of those approaches. It requires something harder. Preparation, not a script. Just clarity about what he actually wants to walk away knowing. Before anything else, a man needs to decide what this conversation is for. That sounds obvious, but it isn't. Because there are actually several different conversations that could happen here. There's the conversation where he wants the truth. There's the conversation where he wants an explanation. There's the conversation where he's already made a decision and just needs to say it out loud. And there's the conversation where some part of him is still hoping she'll say something that makes all of it make sense. Knowing which one he's actually walking into changes everything about how he shows up. Think about a guy named David. He's done the hard internal work. He's given himself the time he needed. He's not calm in the way that means he doesn't care. He's calm in the way that means he's decided his dignity is non-negotiable regardless of what she says. He sits down with her, and he doesn't open with an accusation. He doesn't lead with anger. He says something simple and direct, something like, "I've noticed some things and I need us to have an honest conversation." And then he stops talking. Because one of the most powerful things a man can do in that moment is create space and let her fill it. What she does with that space tells him everything. Some women will get defensive immediately, deflect, minimize, turn it around on him for even bringing it up. Some will shut down completely. And some, when met with genuine calm and directness, will tell the truth. Not always all at once, but the truth has a way of moving toward honesty when it's not being chased with anger. The tone he sets determines a lot about what he gets back. What he should not do is negotiate his own reality. If she tells him he's imagining things and he knows he isn't, the worst thing he can do is agree with her just to make the discomfort stop. That's not keeping the peace, that's abandoning himself. And a man who abandons his own perception to avoid conflict doesn't come out of that conversation with anything useful. He just postpones the inevitable while losing a little more of his self-respect in the process. However this conversation ends, with truth, with denial, with tears, with silence, a man who walks into it grounded and walks out of it having said exactly what he meant to say has done something genuinely difficult with real integrity. And that stays with him. Long after the relationship, whatever form it takes going forward, that version of himself is one he can build on. That's not a small thing. You already knew something was off. Long before any proof, long before any conversation, something in you registered a change. And the most important thing this video can leave you with is this. Trust that. Not obsessively, not destructively, but honestly. A man who stays connected to his own perception, who doesn't talk himself out of what he's quietly seeing, and who handles hard moments with composure rather than chaos, that man doesn't lose himself in situations like this. Even when the situation itself is painful. This wasn't about catching anyone. It was about you staying clear-eyed, self-aware, and grounded when everything around you is trying to pull you off balance. That's the real work. And the fact that you're here, trying to understand rather than just react, already says something about the kind of man you're choosing to be. If any part of this hit close to home, drop it in the comments. Whether you've been through it, you're in it right now, or you just needed to hear some of this out loud, write it down. I read everything, and I will get back to you personally. If this video brought you clarity, share it with someone who needs it. Like it so more men can find it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do that right now, because the conversations on this channel are only getting deeper, and you don't want to miss what's coming next.